Okay, so I'm here with Tina Wiles at My2tor in South Naperville. Tina, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to be a tutor?
Yeah, so it's actually surprising. My degree is actually in engineering, but I've been doing tutoring now for over 15 years. I'd always thought about becoming a teacher. I did go back and got certified to be a high school math teacher, but my passion actually lies in, crazy as it sounds, ACT and SAT prep.
Yeah, not the typical passion, I'll say that.
Yeah, and why I love ACT and SAT prep, for me, it's all about increasing opportunities and increasing confidence for students. So the higher scores they get, the more confidence, and opens up doors for both college and money for school.
Perfect. So tell us a little bit about your family. I think you live here in South Naperville.
I do live in South Naperville. I have 4 sons. The oldest is a freshman in college, and I have a junior and a freshman at Nequa, and I have a 6th grader.
Okay, great. So you work with kids from Nequa, from Waubonsie, from Matea, and from high schools all over the area?
Yeah, so District 203 in Naperville, District 202, and even 308 in Oswego.
Okay.
And yeah, the whole area I've had students come to me with.
And I know from personal experience with my kiddos, I had one of my kiddos get help in math from you in, gosh, I want to say 6th grade and again maybe in 8th grade.
Yeah.
And then one of my kiddos got help getting ready for the SAT. So what age do you start working with kids?
I typically start in high school. So there are special cases that I'll make for working in middle school.
Okay.
But my zone of genius lies in helping those high school kids.
Okay. And what subjects, besides SAT and ACT, we'll talk more about that, but what subjects do you tutor in?
Yeah, so obviously math teacher, math of all levels, science, chemistry, bio, physics.
Oh,
I
wow.
can do, but I have a love-hate relationship with it. And then just general things like study skills and like any kind of pressure situation techniques, right? Like, so big tests, obviously, but finals, I do a lot of study prep for finals, that kind of thing.
Okay. And when you said math all the way through high school, do you do AP as well as standard classes?
Yeah, AP, I tutor up through Calc 3.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I don't know what that is. Okay. And so I did see on your Facebook page that you just recently hired another teacher.
I did.
Yeah.
I hired Laura DeBezic. She's going to work with me. She's an AP English teacher at Nequa. So she works with juniors. So she's going to be working during the weekends with any kind of verbal prep for ACT or SAT. Okay. So grammar, reading.
And what about, is there still an essay in the SAT?
No, there's no essay anymore on the SAT. There is an optional essay on the ACT.
Okay.
So yeah, she could help with that. And she'll probably end up doing things as we get closer to that time of year with seniors applying for college, a lot of essay help.
That's what I was going to ask, because I feel like, I know in my experience when my kiddos sat down, I think in their junior year this summer, to write that between junior and senior year, that was a pretty big, pretty big task.
Exactly.
So you'll help with that as well?
Yeah, so we'll be able to help with that as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. So tell me, if somebody is interested in getting tutoring, but they don't live here in South Naperville and it's a little bit too far for them to drive, are you doing online tutoring?
Yeah, I do online tutoring, and I also have an online program that's online, even if for people that live in the area.
Oh, okay.
That's a monthly membership for SAT. The ACT will be coming soon, where it has over 50 videos online, so they can, it's kind of like a self-paced thing, and then we meet once a week. So they can be able to watch videos in areas they need help, and then I have a set plan for what we cover each week.
And are these videos that you've made?
Yeah.
Oh, so you've made this whole series of videos.
Exactly.
Oh, very interesting. And so people pay a monthly fee. Do they have to commit for a certain amount of time?
No, it's $47 a month. They can cancel anytime. So maybe a quick refresh before the exam, or I have people contacting me like freshman year in high school saying, I'm concerned about test scores already. What can we do? That would be where you're getting a little bit of exposure and practice, but not overwhelming.
Interesting. And you do private tutoring?
Yes.
And you do small group tutoring?
You got it.
So tell me a little bit about those.
So obviously private tutoring is the most hands-on approach, right? Like the specifically diving into what the student needs. Small group tutoring is a maximum of 6 students. So it's still very, like I'm working with each kid individually. but we'll meet for the 5 or 6 weeks leading up to a test date,
Okay.
and a more affordable option,
Yeah,
right,
that's
than
what-
private tutoring.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know when I've been in the waiting room, you see kids sort of coming through on their own, you know,
Yes.
because they're driving, right? So they
Exactly.
drive, they come in, have all their books, come in, study, visit with their friends a little bit, and just jump in and get to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always see people in the waiting room. It looks like they're excited to be here.
Which is kind of crazy,
Yeah,
but
it's
yeah,
kinda
I
crazy.
try to make it as fun as I possibly can.
Yeah, I don't know if you're doing it because of COVID, but I know my kiddos love the little treats.
Yeah.
The little candy treats on the table. It's like, no matter how old they are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A little bit of bribery.
So the SAT is changing a lot. How do you keep up with what's changing on the SAT and the ACTs every year so that you can then share that with the kids?
Yeah, so 3 times a year I'm able to get copies of the test. So when students take it 3 times a year, they can order, it's called the test release.
Okay.
So I go through and take the test myself at least 3 times a year.
Oh.
So I'm able to stay on top of changes that are taking place. And then I do a lot of education through the College Board and ACT. So keep up to date of the changes. Yes, the biggest change right now is that the SAT for this year's freshmen, so like my son,
Okay.
right?
My
and your kiddo
Yeah.
too. Their junior year
Uh-huh.
in the spring, they're supposedly doing completely away with the paper SAT, and it'll all be online.
Oh.
And it's supposed to be a predictive test. So what that means is like, I don't know if you're familiar with the GMAT or the GRE. Basically, you do a problem, and if you get it right, you go to one problem, and if you get it wrong, you go to a different problem. So basically, it'll zone in more on supposedly exactly what your score is, but it'll all be online. So we'll see. ACT was also supposed to do an online thing that with COVID took a huge hit and turned around, and I haven't heard anything else about that. So, but that's the game plan right now for College Board, is that SAT will no longer be a paper test.
Okay. So when somebody has a kid like mine in 9th grade this year, when do you start prepping for the SAT without overwhelming them?
Great question. So I typically recommend the ideal time to start prepping is the summer before junior year.
Okay.
Okay, and because usually there's not as much pressure going on, right? Like as far as during the school year with time. We go through and learn the strategies, we review content, and we do a lot of mindset stuff as well, like self-confidence and trusting your gut. And we do that. If you do that during the summer, then the goal is to take a test the fall of junior year.
Okay.
So then you kind of know where you're at and what you need to do to get to your goals.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
And there used to be the preliminary SAT. Does that still exist?
It does. So obviously things changed a little bit with COVID. So this year, at least in 204, the freshmen and sophomores will be taking a PSAT in April, when the juniors are taking the actual SAT.
Okay.
So yes, because I know this year's juniors, so one of my sons is a junior, he hasn't taken a PSAT since freshman or 8th grade in school.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And if you had a freshman now, would that online class be too much? Would you, I mean, if for that between sophomore and junior year, would they be able to do that online with your
Yeah,
classes?
they'd be able to do that online
and then do
too.
it once a week?
Right.
Is it once a week or once a month?
It's once a week, the class, the calls. That's a really good question, and it completely depends on the student. And even my own kids are different. So for my junior, that would have been too much, and he didn't even want to think about it. And in fact, he has a test in a couple weeks. He doesn't even want to think about it. Where my freshman is extremely competitive and like has his goals set on like University of Chicago and really competitive schools.
Yeah.
So doing some prep and trying to learn some strategies earlier can help because you can actually apply those in school too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm really excited. So, I mean, it's, you don't think about tutoring and test prep being exciting, but you make it sound exciting.
Well, thank you. I try. I love what I do.
Yeah, I can tell. I can tell. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about what's going on now in the education world and testing world?
The testing world is a double-edged sword, right? And I'm definitely not a fan of that the tests have so much importance.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's one of the only ways that from the college's viewpoint, they can see capabilities, right? Because when I taught inner city Chicago for 2 years, I guarantee what a 4.0 GPA was at my inner city Chicago school does not equate to a 4.0 in 204, right? So grade point averages don't necessarily help colleges tell exactly ability levels. Obviously they could see the transcripts too, but the testing is the only thing that's the same for literally everybody. So they're able to see abilities.
So we hear in the news about schools that are going test optional.
Yeah.
Or no test required.
Right.
How do they then? Do you know how do they rate students? How do they decide who to admit?
So obviously they look at grade point averages. They look at transcripts. They look at the applications, right, and the letters, recommendation letters that are written. But more kids than ever are ending up on wait lists and being deferred.
Okay.
And so I think they're really just kind of putting off accepting and looking at who all is coming in, and a lot of people are applying to a lot of colleges because there's no requirement, right? I've had kids that apply to 20 plus colleges, right? So I think they kind of wait and see which kids are saying yes and which kids are saying no and what kind of spots they have left open. My son goes to Grand Valley, and it's near Grand Rapids, Grand Valley State, and Grand Rapids, Michigan. And he did not need test scores to get in, but he needed test scores for scholarship money. So that also happens at a lot of schools too.
So is it many schools that are out there that are test optional? Or
a lot of schools are now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of still carried over from COVID. I don't know if it'll continue. Like right now, they kind of re-upped the no test requirements. A lot of the schools did for this year's juniors. I don't know if this year's sophomores are gonna still see the same trend happening.
But you still think it has value to study, to take the SAT for things like scholarships, even if the school isn't requesting the test?
Yeah, I think because even my junior, not a good test taker.
Yeah.
I'm making him take it simply because we have an option then where he can submit the score if he wants to, or he doesn't need to, right? And so I've found that happening with a lot of people. Like, I'm going to try my best, try to get this test score, but if I can't get what I want, I'll try to apply test optional.
Oh, I see.
I've also heard of schools that if you apply test optional, they might say, we're not accepting or denying you yet, but we want to see a test score.
Oh, interesting. So it sounds like
it's unfortunately, it's still, fortunately for me as a business, right? But unfortunately for kids, I think it's still important.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what's your website? Is it two?
You got it.
TOR?
Yes.
.com?
Yep.
Okay, I always have to think about it when I go type it in.
Yeah. MY2TOR.com.
Okay,
My2tor.
And people can find out everything they need to know. And you can book your appointments right online.
You got it.
And you're not bound. You don't have to buy a series of appointments.
No.
You can come in and do a one-off for a test.
Exactly.
Or you can come in and do a series. Isn't that right?
That's exactly right.
Which
So
I love.
yeah, and it's all because every kid's completely different, and so some kids need only once or twice, and then other kids need more than that.
Okay. Great. Well, Tina, it was so nice to talk to you today.
Nice to talk to you too.
Business.
Thank you so much for coming by.
Have a great day.
You too.